Great, welcome. So now that I have 9 on my clock here, we're gonna go ahead and get started. Thank you all for joining us, for taking time out of your busy schedules to learn more about the Edmund Hillary Fellowship and the Global Impact Visa. My name is Lauren Pete and I lead Canada Attraction. And I have with me Joseph Ayele, who's our Chief Executive.
Hi everybody, thanks so much for joining.
So as I mentioned earlier, we're going to be using the Q&A for questions. And so it's a little box that says Q&A. You'll see it pops up at the bottom of your screen. Please use that to ask us any questions as we go. And with that, we'll go ahead and get started. So as you've seen, we are the Edmund Hillary Fellowship. We are a brand new fellowship for entrepreneurs and startup teams and investors who want to be part of creating positive change for the world from New Zealand. And what we're offering is really a platform for people who are change makers in the world and are thinking about how they can create systemic shifts and change paradigms. So we'll get more into what we're all about. One quick note at the beginning is that we are named after Sir Edmund Hillary. Sir Edmund Hillary and Tenzing Norgay were the first people to climb Mount Everest. Sir Edmund was someone who was a humble beekeeper, but at the same time had a bold vision for climbing a mountain that no one had ever climbed before, for doing something that other people saw as impossible. And so it is very much in his spirit, both of humility and of boldness and his spirit of service. It's in that spirit that we're operating with the fellowship, and it's also in that spirit that we're hoping to find other fellows as part of this fellowship as well. So in terms of what we're going to be covering today, we'll chat a little bit just briefly about what the Edmund Hillary Fellowship is, what the Global Impact Visa is. We'll tell you a bit more about who we're looking for and how you can apply, and then we'll leave lots of time for questions. One note on questions is as we go through, some of the questions, if we see questions popping up frequently, Joseph and I will answer them. Some of the questions, if only 1 or 2 people has the question, then you'll get a response via text message and we might not address it on the webinar. So do know we'll get to your questions, but it may or may not be in the spoken portion of the webinar. And the last note on questions there is that we'll get through the most of the content first, and then we'll save the majority of the questions for the end. So please do start sending the questions our way, and then we'll get to them when we get to that portion of the presentation. All right. So what is the Edmund Hillary Fellowship? As I mentioned, we're a platform for visionary entrepreneurs, startup teams, and investors who want to be part of solving some of the world's biggest problems from New Zealand. And the fellowship is the pathway to also get access to the Global Impact Visa, which is a new and flexible and innovative open work visa that lasts for 3 years, the same as the duration of the fellowship. A quick overview of what we're all about. The biggest thing that we're bringing together here is a community. So it's a 3-year fellowship that's bringing together a community of impact-driven entrepreneurs and investors developing global ventures from New Zealand. The community piece is important because we know that when people are doing bold new things, they need support along the way. And we also believe that when people bump into each other and people who are pushing bold and creative changes in the world start to bump into each other, the results of that is exponentially better than people working on their own. The second key thing about the fellowship is that we bring in up to 50 international and 10 New Zealand fellows every 6 months. So every 6 months, we're bringing in a new group of people, and we do work in a cohort model so that that sense of community is being built across the people in the cohort. The other key thing here is that we provide individualized support. So the fellow's really in the driver's seat, and our team is here to support the fellow in what they're doing. We'll talk a little bit more about what that looks like, but one thing to note here as well is that we're different from an accelerator or an incubator program. There are many of those in New Zealand already, and we encourage our fellows to explore what might be right for them. But in our case, rather than having a shorter period with lots of planned activities, we're a longer period so that there's space for the ideas to develop, for that community to really form. And then our support is very curated to the individuals that are part of the fellowship. Then moving on to that third point here. So we spoke a little bit about the Global Impact Visa. Our international fellows get access to the Global Impact Visa, which is the most entrepreneur-friendly visa in the world, and the very first to be oriented around impact, which we're quite excited about. And something that you'll notice here is the visa is an important part of what allows us to give people from around the world access to this program, but it's really just one small component of everything that we're offering. And so, yes, there's a visa, but the fellowship means that there's also the ramp up support and the ongoing support once the fellows are on the ground. So as I mentioned, we want to get into a little bit more about why to become a fellow. So this is a bit more detail on what that fellowship experience will be like. The big thing I want to bring back here is, again, the key for us is that we're bringing together people who are creative and bold and humble, who have the potential to create ventures that are going to be meaningful for New Zealand and for the world. And so we're taking a bet on the fellows. We're really investing in them and their potential. And we're also really excited as a new program for how this first cohort in particular will help us shape the experience. And so we're quite interested in our fellows being part of designing this for us and shaping it into what fellows most need to get the support that's best for them. So with that as sort of an intro, I'll dive into the slide here. As you can see in this first one, a key thing that we're offering are events throughout the year. And so, you know, these are events in practice, but they're really community building opportunities. So we have a 1-week induction when the fellows first arrive to New Zealand, and that'll include time to get to know the other fellows, but also time to get to know key players in New Zealand and key people in the innovation space from around the world. We'll also every year have a fellow retreat, so that fellow community building will be an ongoing thing throughout the 3-year fellowship. And then there will also be an annual opportunity to do a demo day to showcase the work that the fellows are doing. And so throughout these events, people will be learning from each other and sharing their experiences and supporting each other. And then through sharing your stories and the work that you're doing, our team then is also here to help amplify that story and get your work out to the world, and also bring to you people who could be potential partners and supporters. That's the first one. The second one here, this global connections. So we are a global fellowship, and just as we have international fellows who are coming in and they're bringing their connections and their own networks to the fellowship, the Edmund Hillary Fellowship team also has an extensive network around the world. And so from that, we can help bring in investors and advisors and mentors and connections to innovation hubs. And so, you know, again, the connections that we make will be really based on what the fellows need for themselves. The third one here, the community piece. So we've talked about this a lot, and a lot of these other ones really are just a pathway again to that community. But the biggest value that we see is that community of people from around the world who are thinking about how they can make the world a better place. And we know that this work is hard. It's hard to do a startup anyway. It's even harder to try to figure out ways of not just making a viable company that can survive on its own, but a viable company that's also having a positive impact. There's a lot of new and uncharted territory there. And so especially in this case, we think it's really important to have that community of supporters and other people who understand the challenges of that journey. This fourth point here, the New Zealand introductions. So this is another area where on the one hand, we have fellows from New Zealand, and those fellows will bring their own networks and their own communities. And so we have first and foremost that cross-fellow support. And then just as important, the support from us and our own connections that we have to accelerators and incubators in New Zealand, to academic centers of research excellence, connections to existing grants and venture funding within New Zealand, and also connections to talent. We've heard from potential fellows already the importance of getting access to good talent that can work for your ventures. And this is another area in which we'll be supporting our fellows. And then finally, this last point here is a note that the support that we're providing isn't just for the fellows in a business capacity. We are here to help support the fellows as people, because we know that to go out and build great things in the world, that starts with people who feel supported and happy and healthy. And New Zealand provides, first and foremost, as a country, a wonderful place, a wonderful platform for that own personal happiness and health. But we're also here, the fellowship team, to help support fellows if they're resettling, figuring out where their kids should go to school, finding communities of worship. We're here to support in all the different areas of what it takes to get oriented in a community and feel connected and thriving. So that's an overview of all the different aspects of what we offer. And at this point, I'll hand it over to Joseph to keep us going.
Thanks, Lauren. So you must be wondering, why is this project happening in New Zealand? The primary basis of the Edmund Hillary Fellowship is to incubate solutions that can have transformative global impact in New Zealand. The unique characteristics of a small island country like New Zealand lends itself for experimentation, for exploration, and doing things that haven't been done before. So if you're an entrepreneur or an investor working in very highly innovative areas around solving issues that affect society, the environment, the economy, culture, New Zealand can be a great place to do that from. It's very well networked and connected. People here say that you're pretty much 2 degrees of separation from one another. Very high integrity infrastructures, from being one of the lowest corrupt countries in the world, one of the most peaceful, globally connected, great trade relations with a lot of different countries, having peaceful and progressive policies around gay marriage, around environmental policies, around indigenous rights with the Treaty of Waitangi. And lastly, it's also one of the best places to live in and raise a family and live in a very peaceful place where you can have a level of predictability for the projects and ventures that you're working from. New Zealand also has very highly educated population around the world, and there's this thing that Kiwis call the number 8 wire, which is basically very hands-on, resourceful approach to solving problems, and it makes it really great to do research and development and developing new prototypes of products and services that can have significant global impact. And so what EHF is geared towards is entrepreneurs, startup teams, and investors who are working in areas that have significant potential to create global impact, and will leverage the unique capabilities, infrastructures, and talent base that exists in New Zealand. So I want to give you a little bit of an understanding of how the Global Impact Visa works. The way the partnership between us and government is designed is to run it as a pilot program where in the next 4 years, the government will be issuing 400 visas, global impact visas for anybody who gets accepted into the EHF, the Edmund Hillary Fellowship. It's very open and flexible. What that means is you can work on multiple projects. It doesn't really matter what stage of your startup you're in when joining. And you can travel back and forth between New Zealand and your homeland freely, and be able to fully focus on the work that you're doing. Another thing that's important to know is that if people are coming with their families, sort of spouses and children, there are other paths for them as well that are embedded with the Global Impact Visa, and that they would be getting similar types of flexibilities that the fellows get. The most important thing about the visa here is not just a 3-year thing where you come in, start working on your ventures, but then at the end of the 3 years, you have to renew it or go away. New Zealand is really trying to help people who are accepted in this program to develop deep roots in the country. And how that translates is that there's a clear path to residency, which fellows can apply for 30 months into their program itself. And as Laura mentioned earlier, to access this visa, you have to be accepted into the Edmund Hillary Fellowship. We spoke briefly about really all the different types of ventures and entrepreneurs and investors who we'd like to bring to the country. This image here shows you a little bit about what we want our fellows to achieve. Entrepreneurs and startup teams coming here to build great ventures that have potential to reach a lot of people around the world globally. Fellows who will help connect the startup ecosystem and the community here with the markets that come from the countries and resources in other parts of the world. People who bring new skill sets and new ways of thinking to influence how we approach how to solve a known problem. Investing capital and time of people coming, especially through the investor path, to really help the startup ecosystem thrive. And in this category specifically, compared to other visa categories that you might see in New Zealand, we're not just looking for the dollar amount that each person brings in, but really the quality of that capital and all the different ways that a fellow will invest in supporting startups in the country. And lastly, we're looking for fellows who would be attractions even for more talent and capital from other parts of the world. So people who will serve as catalysts for the Edmund Hillary Fellowship program to thrive, as well as the startup ecosystem to fully benefit. We don't expect anybody to do all 5 of them at the same time, but our expectation, if somebody gets into the program, you'll be able to achieve at least one, if not more, of some of these outcomes. We're going to be tracking the value people create throughout the 3-year experience. And our letter of recommendation is needed for somebody to apply for the residency. So it is really important that people who are coming to the country are able to achieve some of these goals that we have here while doing what they do best, which is building their ventures or investing in the opportunities that they like to.
Great. So with that, I'll jump back in. I just want to do a few notes on the questions. First of all, and I should have said this earlier, our colleague Alina is helping answer the questions. And so you'll see that she's up there as a panelist, and she's helping answer some of them as they come in. And later on, she'll also be asking us, making sure that we answer some of the top questions. So thank you, Alina, and you'll be hearing from her. The second thing I wanted to address, I noticed that there are a few questions coming in about whether we'll share the slides and the recording. And so, yes, we will. After this presentation is done, we'll get the recording and then we'll upload it and send it to you all via email. So watch for that after the presentation is done. And then I just want to do a quick pause and see if Alina has any other top questions that she thinks that we should answer now. Not now. Okay, perfect. So we'll just keep going, and but please do keep the questions coming. Great. So who are we looking for? The framing that we use for this and for everything that we do is, again, operating in the spirit of Sir Edmund Hillary. And so you can read a little bit more about him and Tenzing Norgay there. But one of the key things that I learned as I became involved with the fellowship and learned more about Sir Edmund Hillary is, although he's known for this bold, audacious action that he did in climbing Mount Everest with Tenzing Norgay, he in fact spent the majority of his life in service. And so he has dedicated much of his life to working with Sherpa communities in the Himalayas, to building schools, and to building training centers and hospitals. And so again, you know, this that spirit of service is another value that we as a team strive to operate by, and that we also are looking for fellows who will be in the mold of. The other thing I want to mention here as well is, yes, there were 2 people who reached the top of Mount Everest first, but there was a team of hundreds that made it happen for them. And so something else that we're aware of, and why we think the humility point is so important, is that no one can do bold and audacious things on their own. It really takes teams and communities, and that's what we're hoping to support with, and providing the community of fellows and the platform of New Zealand that can enable people to go out and achieve the big visions that they're hoping to achieve in the world. So with that, we wanted to share with you our values. And so again, this is a key thing that we're looking for in our fellows. So one of them is boldness. We're also looking for people who work in the spirit of interconnectedness. So, understand that our actions impact others, and we need groups and communities to be able to achieve great things. People who are striving for excellence and have high standards for themselves. People who are thinking about global impact. So people who aren't, who care about their local communities, but are also thinking about how that can connect and spread and impact other parts of the world. People who are authentic, who are true to themselves. We think that, again, great things only come when people are true to themselves and living authentically. People operating in the spirit of kaitiaki sangha, so the spirit of stewardship, and also operating with humility. And something to note here is that the dark blue, the words that you see there are in Te Reo Māori, which is the indigenous language of New Zealand. And it's another key part of the values of New Zealand and of Sir Edmund Hillary. So with that as a framing, we want to dive into the selection criteria that we're looking at. For us, the first thing is the people are the people. So the individual or the team who are putting themselves in the application. Within that, with those people, we're looking at, first, do they have the skills and the capabilities to achieve the idea or the venture that they've proposed? The next thing that we look at is if they have the networks and connections. So again, in that spirit of interconnectedness and in the understanding that no one person can do great things on their own, are the applicants people who have gone out and made connections to other people that will be an important part of their journey and their success. We'll also be looking for references and endorsements. We're not experts in every area, and so we will be learning from people who know a lot about different industries who can help bring in that expertise. And then, as I mentioned before, we'll be looking for alignment with our values. So are these fellows who live in accordance with these values and seek to bring that into the world? That's that first chunk on the individual. The next key thing that we look at is the work of the applicant. And so in the case of people who are building ventures, that would be the ventures they're building. And in the case of people who are investing their time and their expertise, that would be the investments that they've done. Within that, we look at the impact potential of the work. So what's the potential impact for New Zealand? And what's the potential impact for the world? Is this impact important? Is there a real need behind it? And who will be impacted by it? The next thing within the work is the scalability and the longevity of the project. We're looking for things that can help many different parts of the world, not just one. And we're also looking for projects that will have a lasting impact, that won't just have a big burn and then end, but that can have a positive impact on the world for decades and even generations to come. And then finally, we're looking for work and people who are able to execute on that work. And so people who have the right resources and the right support to be able to achieve what they're hoping to achieve. This third point here is also another key one. It's the ability to succeed in New Zealand. So is this initiative something that is meaningful and important for New Zealand? And is it something that could succeed in New Zealand, where New Zealand does make sense to incubate this idea and New Zealand makes sense as a place to launch that idea? And then the other piece there is interest in being involved with New Zealand for the long term. As we mentioned, we're looking for work that can have a long-term impact, and we know that big changes often do take a decade or more to fully achieve. And so if we're looking for people who are really interested in being part of that long journey, not only with their venture, but also with New Zealand. Those are the pieces that relate to the individual and the work. This last point here around diversity relates to the overall makeup of the cohort. So behind that is a belief on our end that it's important and people do more and work becomes better when we bring different perspectives to it. And so we'll be looking at the different types of people that are in the cohort, the different industries, the different backgrounds, and whether that cohort as a whole will have enough different perspectives that there will be interesting and challenging conversations between the members of that group. That's on the selection criteria piece for the fellowship. And I'll move next to some of the criteria for the global impact visa. Joseph will talk more in a minute about the selection process, but it does start with a review by the fellowship team, and then those who are recommended go on and go through the global impact visa process. Within that, Immigration New Zealand is looking for a few key things. First is an acceptable standard of health and character. So on the health side, that's someone who is healthy. And on the character side, it is checking for a criminal record. So making sure that there is no record of criminal history. The second point here, a high level of English language proficiency. We'll be evaluating that. The fellowship team will be evaluating that in the written application and in spoken interviews. And then Immigration New Zealand will be looking for the letter of reference for us. And in certain cases, also evidence of having lived or worked in an English-speaking area, or a satisfactory score on an English language test. This next point here around sufficient maintenance funds. The New Zealand government recommends 36,000 Kiwi a year to be able to live comfortably and support yourself. That's about 24,000 US or about 20,000 British pounds. In terms of having access to those funds, it could be that the applicant is coming in with those funds already, or can demonstrate the ability to earn that income. So either the applicant or a partner of the applicant is able to earn that income to support themselves or any dependent children. And then a third one might be someone who's coming in and who has royalties or other ongoing income from previous ventures. And then finally, this last point is relevant and important for investors. So investors who are looking to invest funds in New Zealand, there's a check that those funds were legally acquired. You can learn more about these and in fact, all the different points that we're covering in this presentation by looking at the FAQs on our website. Great, so I'll pass it now to Joseph.
So I'll walk us briefly around what the application journey looks like for the first cohort, and we do this every 6 months pretty much. People submit expressions of interest online if they'd like to connect with us and learn a lot more about the application. And if you're ready to apply, you can do it only online on our website, and all applications are received through this portal. And we go through our own selection process, which I'll talk about very briefly, and then for those who are coming from overseas, apply for the Global Impact Visa. Once you've gone through that whole process, in October this year, we have the cohort induction week in New Zealand. That's going to be mid-October, and that's where the fellows get to learn about one another, get to learn about New Zealand, and start making the early introductions and connections into the country. And that's when the 3-year fellowship program begins for all the fellows. As Lauren mentioned earlier, during those 3 years, we'll do various retreats, demo days, and gatherings that are relevant and useful for the cohort that is coming through. 30 months through the 3-year fellowship program, then international fellows can apply for residency. And if accepted in that residency program, then as a fellow, you become an alumni of the program and are able to provide support for the next generation of fellows who come through the EHF funnel. So there are key parts of the selection process. There are actually quite, we can separate them into 3 key stages. The first stage is you apply for the program. Then the Edmund Hillary Fellowship team assesses all the applications that are coming through, leverages expert panel, people who are experts in their fields as well, to do a thorough evaluation. First filter, we'll invite some of the applicants for an interview, which will happen end of May and early June. and all the interviews will be done online through video conferencing. From then on, our team will do a thorough background check and research on everybody who's gone through that stage, and then do references for people you have worked with and have been doing business with in the past. Sorry. So that's the first stage from the EHF side. And then what happens from then is there's the independent selection panel. So this is a group outside of EHF who have a lot of experience in building startups and investing in high innovative projects. Will do the final decisions of who becomes fellows of the program. So it's actually not our operational team, but it's the independent selection panel that decides who becomes a fellow. All the Kiwi fellows are automatically accepted. All the international fellows then have to get accepted in the Global Impact Visa. So the third step there for internationals is government acceptance. By early July, we'd have identified who the fellows would be, and then international fellows will be invited to apply for the Global Impact Visa. One thing to note is if you're for certain looking to apply for the program right now, one check that takes the longest time is police certificates from every country that you've lived in or spent more than 12 months in the last 10 years. So in 10 years' time, count the number of countries you've spent in more than 12 months, and you need to get a police certificate from them, as well as every country that you're a national of.
Just one other thing to clarify as well. So Kiwis and internationals will go through the exact same selection process from the Edmund Hillary Fellowship team. The divergence is once that independent selection panel decides on the final recommended group of fellows, because the Kiwi fellows already have citizenship or residency in New Zealand, they then are already a fellow and they don't need to apply for the Global Impact Visa. Whereas at that point, once the international fellows are recommended, then they need to go through and apply for the Global Impact Visa before their fellowship's participation is confirmed.
Awesome. As we mentioned, all applications are done online. It takes about 30 to 60 minutes to submit an application. You can save and return to your application, and if we need additional information, we're going to ask you as well. There is an application fee to be considered for the program. It's 850 New Zealand dollars for entrepreneur applicants and $3,000 for investor applicants. We've got limited number of scholarships. We're out for this cohort, but in future cohorts, you can apply for scholarships primarily for entrepreneur applicants to be able to subsidize some of this cost. The reason why we charge an application fee is to cover our costs of processing these applications as well. And I don't know if many of you are aware of, but the Edmund Hillary Fellowship is also set up as a not-for-profit. And so nobody is making any financial gain from this. And all the funds that are coming in through this go to helping process applications as well as providing the right level of support to all the fellows who come through.
Great. So with that, we'll go ahead and spend the rest of the time on questions. I've heard from Alina that there's a few top questions here that have come up. So we'll start with these ones at the very, that have come up quite a bit. So I'll start with one here from Federico, asking around how to qualify for the fellowship. So how will we choose amongst the participants? Is there any field or subject that gets preference over the others? Joseph, do you want to respond to that one?
Sure. So we're agnostic to industry and different areas that you come from. So it doesn't really matter what industry or sector you're working in or what stage in your startup phase that you're in. What's important is your ability to execute on the bold visions that you have and whether the infrastructures and environments that we have in New Zealand will help set you up for success. So one thing that we recommend is if there's something you're really interested in plugging into New Zealand is to start making connections with the local ecosystem, to reaching out, to really understand what is available to you. One thing we also recommend everybody is to come visit the country and really see if it's the right fit for you to building your long-term base here.
And something we can add, so there are a few industries that we see as having lots of innovation potential in particular. So I'll tell you a few of those with the caveat that we've seen industries take off in New Zealand quite quickly, and so this list is not exhaustive. But in terms of some of the things where there's really great innovation activity happening already, space and thinking about access to space and data from space. Also fintech. New Zealand has a long history of having new financial products come out, and so it's a group of people that in New Zealand that has already been early adopters of brand new financial products. Also education and health, there's a lot of great activity happening there. Food technology, AR, VR, New Zealand has a great tradition of storytelling already, and augmented reality and virtual reality are very much the future wave of that. So those are a few example areas in case that's helpful, but again, we're very open to other ideas that where it makes sense to do it from New Zealand. This next one from Simone is another one that Alina said has come up. So Simone asks, other than the weekly retreats, how much time would we have to learn from the other entrepreneurs on the program? How often would we get to meet and for how long? Good question, Simone. So the way it's structured at the moment is there's 2 big events every year. So a week-long fellow retreat and then several days for a demo day, demo days, and a showcase event. Around that, and so those are key events where all the fellows will be participating. Around that, we'll have cluster events. So for example, there might be another week-long event that is for fellows, a cluster of fellows that are working on space or on education. And so you could anticipate that there would be 3 to 4 larger events like that a year, and those would be the much more structured ones. Beyond that, it's also very much up to the fellows. And so, you know, as we've seen in the past with other events that we've run, people at those organized events often make their own connections and then set up their own smaller meetings and chats around that afterwards.
Very much agree with what Lauren said there. We understand that a lot of people who we're trying to attract are going to be extremely busy people. And so we're trying not to fill up your times with events that take up significant time, but create very few throughout the year that make it very valuable and useful. But the key thing that we're offering is basically a platform for fellows to really connect and co-design their own experiences along with other fellows as well. And so if there are other entrepreneurs that you're working with or collaborating with, there are so many opportunities to do that.
Great.
The next question is, what types of ideas are we looking for? I think we touched upon it earlier, but really the ones that are going to most likely succeed are ventures and projects that are creating solutions that can really scale outside of New Zealand. So highly innovative, new system paradigm solutions that are creating a new approaches, new ways of addressing known problems, and ventures that if they succeed, they'll have a positive impact on society, on the environment, and on the economy as well. So not just looking for single bottom line, maximize profit at all costs type of ventures, but those that create a better society for New Zealand as well as people outside of the country. I'm going to the next one as well. What's the difference between an entrepreneur and an investor fellow application? Very good question. The entrepreneur application path is primarily for groups of people who are coming to New Zealand and joining the program to build ventures primarily. So those who are in the trenches building new types of ventures, new types of solutions, and creating things that can scale. The investor application path is for individuals who are looking to support the entrepreneurs through a multiple set of ways. It could be through financial investment, mentorship, access, resources, experience and skill sets, but people who are going to be probably involved in multiple projects, not necessarily always jumping in and doing it. Now what we've learned is that there will be quite a lot of people who wear both hats, the types of investors that have been most attractive to our program are those with entrepreneurial experiences. And a lot of those people aren't able to take the entrepreneurial spirit out of them and stop them from actually going and building ventures. And so really the two paths are designed primarily to help you understand where you're going to be spending most of your time into. If 80% of your time is going to supporting other ventures and playing that more support role, then the investor path is most appropriate. But if you're looking to spend significant portion of your time involved in a single or multiple ventures, then the entrepreneur path is most appropriate.
There's another question from Simone around where in New Zealand the retreats and the meetups will be held. That's another great point of clarification. For that one, it'll be across New Zealand. So we've been looking at venues in the middle of New Zealand that are near Wellington, been looking at venues that are up north, or up in Northland, or all the way down at in the south of the South Island. So our hope is to give fellows an opportunity to see a wide variety of the different types of communities and environments that exist across New Zealand.
There's one question from Zohair, which is basically saying, we're looking for global impact. Does the project have to be humanitarian in nature? A tech venture in the private sector can make a huge impact, but isn't necessarily do good. Very good question. Really the way we value impact is what are the consequences of your venture succeeding and what impact is it gonna have? And so we're taking ventures from purely for profit, social enterprise, B Corp, nonprofit, cooperative, all types of designs, and really asking if the work you're doing succeeds, are you bringing solutions that help humanity progress and address challenges that really matter? And a lot of these really depend on the types of applications that you have and the type of work that you're doing. But purely working in the private sector does not exclude you from applying and also from creating positive impact in the world.
Great. There's a couple of different questions around how people can be involved in the fellowship. So people who have different skill sets in different areas. And as we mentioned, the key pathways are really if you're interested in starting something, you can apply as an entrepreneur fellow, or if you're interested in, if you have some entrepreneurial experience and you want to be supporting other ventures, you can apply as an investor fellow. The other thing I'll add is that we are building out our network of mentors and advisors and investors. And so if you'd like to be involved with the fellowship in one of those other capacities, do let us know. There's a contact us form on our website. It's actually on the link is on the previous page here. So this link at the very bottom of the page here, the contact us form, you can go on to that and let us know if you want to be involved as a fellow or as some other type of supporter that I just mentioned.
I'm going to answer a few questions quickly here. How can we protect our ideas? So when you submit an application, if there are significantly sensitive commercial information, please put an info on that piece of information, since we're going to be getting external perspectives and expertise inputting into that. When you get to New Zealand, we've got great IP protection laws and infrastructures, not just in New Zealand, but around the world. And so you can work with lawyers to make sure that your work is being protected.
I can do, there's a question around English language and the criteria for that. So there's much more about this on the FAQs on our website and also on the website for Immigration New Zealand for the Global Impact Visa. But briefly, a variety of different English language tests are accepted. So TOEFL, IELTS, and the list goes on, FCE, OET. So do check out the website to learn more about the specifics of what you can show for that.
The next question is, I'm really eager to apply with my ventures. What kind of documentation do you require? Please check on our application guide on our website, ehf.org/apply. You'll see what you're required to do there. A lot of documentation and so on, we'll be asking it further down the line to validate the information. But there's a lot of information on the application form itself that will give you a sense of exactly what's required.
So on these ones. There's a question around someone, it looks like Mahesh has experience in one sector and is looking at working in a different sector. And we're absolutely open to that. You know, in fact, we think that fresh eyes to a new industry can be really useful. So we would consider that. And the key thing there would be, one, showing us how some of the skills you have from before would be transferable. And then two, the even bigger thing would be the network of people who are working in that new sector and have the expertise that you could ask for support and advice along the way. Then we would certainly consider it.
There's a question which I'm not fully sure of, but it's talking about.
Yeah, I'll just jump in here because I've seen, yes. We've corresponded a little bit, Willie. So the person who, and I'm going to broaden this question. So it's a question around two people who are working on a joint venture, and there's an international business partner, and then it looks like there's a Kiwi business partner. So in this case, and for co-founders in general, the people who should apply are the people that you want to be part of the fellowship experience. And so if in this case, the key concern is how the international business partner can have access to New Zealand and can be connected to others in New Zealand, it could make sense that just that business partner applies. But if both business partners and co-founders want to be able to be part of the community, if they both want to be coming to the events and benefiting from some of the connections, then it would make sense for both people to apply. The last thing on that though is for any team, each team only needs to fill out the application form once. And so even if you and a co-founder apply, choose one person to fill out the form, that's the primary applicant. And then on question 6 of the entrepreneurship application, you'll say you're applying on behalf of others on your team, and you'll list the other people there, which then means that we can interview everyone on the team at the interview stage.
Next question I'm going to take is, as an investor, what kind of investment or criteria applies? Primarily the types of investments that we'd be looking for through this program are high impact, innovation, high risk types of based of investments. So less around just typical real estate investments that more traditional paths have, but investments into innovative opportunities and ventures. But looking beyond just the financial investment, as well as the time and energy and skill sets that the investor provides to the ventures.
Great. I'll do a couple of these quickly. So to what extent might there be opportunities for fellows to collaborate, share ideas, and form teams? Oh, it looks like this is a question during the application process. So by the time you've applied, we will be looking for people who have some idea of what they're interested in doing. And we'll be deciding whether or not to accept people based on that. However, we do encourage people before applying to get to know others in New Zealand and to look for potential collaborators in New Zealand and in other parts of the world. That's one. The second thing is, once people are accepted as fellows, we've seen this already at other events that we've done, we anticipate that a lot of the fellows will end up seeing opportunities for collaboration and may end up working together more closely. And in fact, we encourage that. The next quick one as well, this is a great clarification from Paul. Is there a time limit? I need to stay in New Zealand if I get the fellowship? No. So this is one of the things that makes this a very flexible visa, the Global Impact Visa. We have intentionally designed it for global citizens who have work and things that they are involved with in different parts of the world. And so there's no minimum number of days in New Zealand. We're simply looking for people who are spending the time in New Zealand to be able to build their venture here and have an impact here.
The next question I'm going to take is, we discuss past success and failures that were attributed? So this program is new. We don't have a whole lot of experience designing this type of program to look into and tell you what has worked, what hasn't. Primarily the focus that we have is in identifying and supporting high impact entrepreneurs, investors and startup teams. So individuals who are most likely to succeed through the program, and our work is to help them succeed through it. So if we speak in 5 years from now, we'll have a lot more data to share with you through the program and process. One thing I'll touch upon though is around just failure of ventures. If a venture comes into the program, there aren't set up punishments for somebody to failing through the program, as long as they rise up and work on the next ventures or change type very quickly. We understand that failure is a big part of the entrepreneurial process, and so it's already baked in and embedded into the program design.
Great. There's a next question from Joseph around if entrepreneurs need to have funds or have raised money before being accepted in the fellowship. No, and so this is something else that makes the Global Impact Visa quite flexible. There's no minimum dollars that need to have already been raised from investors. What we'll be looking at is both your skills and your capabilities and the connections that you have and some of the whether there's the potential for you to make that happen, to make that venture happen. And of course, once fellows are in, we'll be helping out with some connections to investors and funding opportunities as well.
How do reference checks work? So we ask applicants to provide references of people that they've worked with. That'll be in a secondary form that we're going to send to everybody who's applied very soon. As well as wherever necessary, we're going to reach out to other people who we think can provide significant level of perspectives on the people who have applied so far. So part of it supplied by the applicant and part of it that we might end up reaching out directly. Is there office space available as part of EHF or housing? We're not directly providing that from a central way, but we're aware of different regions across New Zealand who are creating opportunities as office space and meeting areas for our fellows to be based in. There are quite a lot of co-working spaces in New Zealand that are available for you that makes sense for you to base yourself in so that you're always embedded and connecting with the local ecosystem.
Great. I'll do this next question from Florencio around, so he's been in a few different countries and he's trying to figure out where he can get the police clearance from. If you go to our website and you look, or you just go straight to the Immigration New Zealand website and look for the criteria for the Global Impact Visa, you'll see there's information about how to get police checks from every country around the world. So go check that out and it'll give you the specifics. There's another question here from Vanessa around working with other employers. Yes, you could be working part-time or full-time with other employers. And the key thing we'll be looking for is if in addition to earning income, you'll also have the space and capacity to be developing your venture as well.
One thing I'll add to that is if your primary interest is to get employment, then there are other paths for you to consider. So EHF might not be the best path for you and Global Impact Visa, as this is primarily for people who are going to focus their time and energy into building their own ventures. Great.
So there's another question around applying as a team, and if people apply as a team, does the whole team need to attend every event? So this is a good clarification. There's actually two ways to think about getting your team involved. For co-founders, we would recommend that they apply as fellows. And so if they're applying as fellows, then yes, they would need to attend the few events that we have during the year. If your team is broader than that and there's other employees that you'd like to be bringing over as well, then what we would recommend is have the co-founders apply as fellows. And then once you have the company established or a branch of the company established in New Zealand, then through the company, you can apply for work visas for the other employees. In that case, the other employees would not be expected to attend all of fellowship events.
I'm going to answer a quick question around if you've got a family with wife and children, how much do you think you need? It really depends where you base yourself in, and you can go online and research each region and what interests you the most. What the New Zealand government has mandated for the visa program is a minimum of $36,000 per family. Now, if you're living in the middle of Auckland City, that might be significantly higher than that. So my recommendation is for you to go and do a little bit of research to get a sense of what the cost of living in your preferred area is going to be.
Great. There's another question around the English requirements. So people who are living in an English-speaking majority country do not need to complete a language test. And again, there's extensive information on our website and the Immigration New Zealand website. So check there for more.
I'm going to answer a question by Tim, if there's a minimum amount that we anticipate for EHF on the investor stream to have free capital to invest. Good question there. We don't have a minimum because we understand that different investors have value beyond just capital. So if you're looking to explore a path as an investor and you've got investable capital, but you've got more to offer beyond just the money, would encourage you to look at our application and in submitting your application to showcase all the different ways you see yourself being able to support the ecosystem.
Great. So there's another question around the types of meetups. We will continue to provide these webinars for people who are interested in applying, but once people are in the fellowship, those meetings will be done in person. So we can have all the extra interactions that come from an in-person meeting.
A question here from Andrew about envisioning encouraging direct collaboration among some of the early stage ventures that are part of the program. So we're definitely going to be encouraging to work together. We very much see EHF as that marketplace for connection amongst a very high caliber, highly selected group of people. What we're seeing is even for people who are interested in the program so far, a lot of collaborative projects that have been emerging, that have been influencing others, how they work, or with some people getting into initiatives that have direct collaboration and people really working together. So this is something I would love to foster as much as it makes sense for the fellows themselves.
Great. There's a question from Pablo around the funding needed to move to New Zealand and operate New Zealand. So on that one, I'll refer to some of the answers we gave earlier about the recommended $36,000 to live in New Zealand. And again, if you look for maintenance funds, that's the term that the Immigration New Zealand uses to describe it. You can see more on their website as well.
Question around what we aim to gain from the interview process. I think you kind of answered the question yourself there, Simone, which is really a lot of stuff that we can't get from written application. So getting to know the candidate and individual and hear their stories. One recommendation I have for everybody who's looking to apply is we've designed our application process and form itself to just help you be who you are instead of try to write something that you think we want to hear, as that is going to be really important for us in the process. And so really the whole process is just for us to get to really know you, your potential and your ability to succeed with the EHF platform that we're creating.
So quickly again on the English language, if you've completed your university in English, then you do also need to spend some time working in an English-speaking country for that to be accepted. There's a lot more on the website. There's another question around, again, this whether to apply as an entrepreneur or an investor. So, you know, I think what Joseph said earlier is helps out a lot in terms of what's your primary motivation. Is it building a venture or supporting other ventures? The other thing we recommend is just log in and check the questions on both the entrepreneur and investor application forms and see which ones you would feel more confident in answering. I'll just do, so we, people who have submitted applications will get back to those. You'll start hearing back from our team in May, and then the follow-ups will happen from there.
A question from Vipul is, what if my venture fails? Do I return back to my country after 3 years? That's a very good question. We touched upon it earlier, but we allow ventures to fail because that's part of the natural process. What we expect is if one of your ventures fails, for you to start working your next venture or collaborate with other people, you won't be kicked out of the program just for failing. But we have issues when somebody is just staying inactive after something like that has happened. And so I really understand that that's part of the process, and we're there to support you throughout all of that and connect you with a lot of ecosystem players in the game. But that is not going to be primarily a cause for rejecting somebody from the program.
I'm just gonna do a quick time check because I see that our hour is up. And so what we'll do is stick around a little bit longer to answer some of the questions that are left here. But for those of you that need to leave, thank you so much for joining us today. We're really looking forward to hearing from you and learning more about your ideas. And there are some questions around how to get in touch with us. Please feel free to email us at partners@ehf.org or use the contact form on the website. And we look forward to hearing from you. Thank you.
Last thing I'd also mention is to check our FAQ, as a lot of the questions that you have here are already answered. Please go on our website and check on our FAQ. We'll stick around after this just to answer in writing some of these more direct questions, but thank you so much for making time to joining us and for your interest in the fellowship program.
Thanks. Have a great day. We hope to hear from you. Take care.